We want to warmly welcome you all. We are, of course, very honored to have the Foreign Minister of Sweden, Margot Wallström, and the distinguished guest all the way from Chile, Michelle Bachelet, the Foreign Minister of Chile, and now the designated UN Rights High Commissioner. Johan, the floor is yours.
I would like to start actually by asking you, you have a very long, distinguished careers, but you also started off somewhere. So, how is it that you started to engage in politics? How did the world look like at then? It was a bit of a time ago. And how do you compare that view of how does the world look like today, and what keeps driving you?
Well,
Michelle has a much more dramatic...
no, I'm much older than you, Margot. That's the thing. Well, I think I just couldn't help it, if I might say, because I was raised in a family where I was always taught that people deserve equal rights, equal opportunities, that we were all not equals, because all of us are different, but that we all are equals in the sense of being part of humanity and being an important part of humanity. So my family was always, none of my parents were from a political party, but they had strong, I would say, dreams in terms of having a better world for all, having a world more just, more equalitarian, and that's how I was taught. And they were both public servants because they really wanted to serve the people. So of course I was a public servant. I was afterwards. But being in the university, at school first, I mean, I was not in a political party at the time, but I was always the president of the class. I was always organizing things. I just couldn't help it. I love to do things, you know? And afterwards, when I went to the university, then there was intense debates. That was the first year that President Allende was elected. And there was, first before the election and afterwards, and then I will go to the assembly of students, and then listening to them, I said, those are the ones who represent me. So then I went and I adscribed to the socialist youth at the time, and I started working in different things. On one hand, at the university, but on the other hand, we would go to shanty towns, teach people, because I was a medical student, you know, having like health services in shanty towns, and so on. And then, of course, my life went to different moments. I was in exile. I was I disappeared for some time, and then I was in exile. And then I went back to Chile to work again to finish school, university, and afterwards working as a public servant, because that's the way I wanted to serve my people. And I never thought I would become a minister, and neither a president, of course, not at all. So I was, first of all, when President Lago was elected, he named me a Minister of Health, and I was the first female Minister of Health in Chile. And then I was the first Minister of Defense in Latin America, the 5th in the world. And I'm not saying this to say, wow, how I am. It looks like how bad the situation of the world of women are, that I was the first in so many things. And then I was the first UN Women Executive Director. That's when we met with Margot. Both of us were living alone in New York, and both of us were working on women's issues, so we had a great friendship there. We worked very long. And then, of course, I was the first female president of Chile, then twice, and now I'm going to be High Commissioner for Human Rights. And I asked somebody, should I go to a psychologist to ask them why I'm always in the challenging thing? And my friend told me, don't go there. You go to many sessions, you have to pay a lot of money, and he will tell you because you like it.
I come from a working class family in the north of Sweden. There was no excess of anything, money or anything, but an excess of love, I would say, and respect for each other. From my parents, I learned the basic values of how to look at people, how to value society and other people, and how to live together, to be honest and clean and hopefully sober, was an important thing. Also that there should always be an extra chair for somebody who wants to join for dinner. My mother was a very, very generous person, and she would always take pity We had a neighbor who was really in deep trouble, and he had 3 sons. He lost his wife, and then he had 3 sons, and they had different types of problems. And she would always really grab them from the street and take them in and let them have a shower. Or one was an alcoholic, and it was really problematic. And so always somebody from outside at our table. I think it's a good principle. But then, and there was it wasn't a political family, no tradition of coming from the labor union or anything like that. But really, I call it a coincidence, because a neighbor asked me if I wanted to start the Social Democratic Youth Club at home. And I had really no idea what that was. I knew from the school, of course, presentations were a little bit. And I felt very much for justice and international solidarity. So that's actually how my political interest was raised. That we took such an interest in what happened in the rest of the world. Chile, what happened in Chile. I collected so much money. We went around, we put up posters, we discussed, we learned about Chile. So it really came very close to our hearts. So of course what happened in Vietnam and fighting against apartheid. So that was what brought me into politics. But it was more of a coincidence. If she had not asked me, I think she just felt I was a very stubborn person, and she was in the party section at home, and she wanted somebody to start the youth club. So that's how I started.
Well, I think in my case it was completely different. I approached these socialist leaders and said, I want to be part of the socialist youth. And they said, are you sure? So I had to talk to them like 5 times until they said, I do want to be. Could you listen to me? But it was very funny, because of course they were, in other very high positions, so that's why they were not recruiting people. But on the other hand, it's very impressive what you said, Margot, because I have met many leaders that have told me that Chile was very important in their political life. For example, Jan Stoltenberg from Norway, he said he was like 14, and he will be in the streets and going. But what amazed me the most, there was one president of an African country, because you think Africa has so many problems, and they were marching and demonstrating in the streets for Chile against the coup d'etat. So of course it's not only about Chile. All of us, like you mentioned, we were all in the street, 1, 2, 3 Vietnam, 1, 2, 3 Vietnam, Ho Chi Minh, lucharemos hasta el fin. And also apartheid, against apartheid. I think the same kind of causes that moves when somebody cares, cares to
I still remember the poster in Chile, the drop of blood. Yeah. And I think that this is, I think it brings you into politics in a very wise way. And it engages you because you have to learn about the rest of the world, and it widens your perspective, and very important. And of course the 70s was also a time when there was a lot of political discussion. So much happened in the West, and it was an inspiring time to be up.
The dictatorship, Vietnam, apartheid, and so on. And it's easy then to say that it was easier perhaps joining politics then than it is today. And then at the same time, when you look at Afghanistan, you see what is happening in Syria, you see the migration, we also see what is happening in Burma. There's a lot of conflict unresolved in Africa, and we today see Nicaragua, the demonstrations and fighting for freedom as well. How come that people doesn't seem to look at politics as the alternative for change? In the same way that perhaps you did, or as you joined political forces around that time. What is it that has changed in society, or has politics changed?
I think, first of all, at that time, the world was bipolar. You had 2 clear poles. So you were in one side or another, or sometimes some people in the middle, but I mean, it was so clear what was going on, but some people will feel closer to one place to another and felt they need to contribute. But I have an opinion that maybe does not represent what happens in Sweden, but what I've seen in Latin America, but I have seen it also in Europe, in some countries. I think it's a universal trend that people is like disappointed of politics. That, I mean, we're having some crisis on democracy, how people feel that democracy is. Because democracy is not only about voting it's important to vote. It's very important to vote. And to have good people elected that will represent you and that will make your dreams fulfill to advance. But it's not only about voting, it's also about people feeling democracy every day in their lives and how democracy really improves their lives. When people feel that politics is not improving their lives, they start feeling not interested in voting either, that start not believing. I think most of the parties have gone through a big analysis of what's going on. We have so many other actors today. Through the social networks, people get information, fake news many times, information, so they don't need to go to a party or to a meeting. Because for us, it was very important to have a meeting in some place. Now people get along through WhatsApp, through other. So I think there was a change, and politicians and political parties need to think how we adjust to these changes, how we continue offering solutions, strategies, possibilities, opportunities to people that they feel attracted to. And I think the world is moving too fast, and not always we are able to go in the same velocity. I mean, it's much more than that, just to mention some of the issues.
I think that globalization brought prosperity and riches to groups of people, and others felt totally left behind.
Yeah.
And what we see now is maybe a new fight between good and evil. And I must say that reading the article today in today's paper about Viktor Orban and also the Italian Prime Minister declaring war against, or fight against the democratic and leftist forces in this world, I just say bring it on, because we are ready to fight again. It's a real attack on democracy and human rights, and we see for the first time in decades, we see that those countries who are moving in an autocratic way, with autocrats leading their countries, the number of those countries is higher than the ones who move towards democracy. Because for many years we saw, of course, the African countries rising to democracy with elections and starting to build a middle class and providing sort of services. But there is a deep mistrust in politicians, and I think it has to do with making sure that we close those gaps between groups of people, that we continue with reforms that will gain everybody and create societies that are for everybody. And this is what I think we saw also in the US, and put Trump to power. And what they do now is that they make sure that everything is just making sure that they can stay in power. And if it means putting your opponents and the opposition in prison, they will. And so it has come back, you know, that they put them in prison, or they close down free and independent media. And I think that this is so dangerous, and we have to look up. And I think now the most difficult, but also the most demanding and the most important task for us is to fight for democracy. Also for our foreign policy for the next 4 years, we have to fight for democracy and for human rights.
I completely agree. I think democracy is under threat, under big threat, because you see sometimes some people were elected, but after 20 years they continue there, and they want to maintain in power because there's corruption too in many countries of the world. So they don't want it moved, you know. So we need to fight corruption. We need to ensure free elections so people can really feel that they elected the ones who represent them. But also I think human rights are under big threat. That's why I would say my next job won't be an easy one, you know, because even we have just on Friday, that the US decided not to fund anymore the Office of the Human Rights Commissioner. So it's multilateralism. That has been, it's not perfect, nothing is perfect. Democracy is not perfect. No country is perfect. But, I mean, even though we always thought that Sweden was almost perfection, I have to say, and for us it's still a role model in many things. It's interesting because when you listen that some people believe that Sweden is not in a well position for, I mean, you have taken for granted, many people have taken for granted what is not to be taken for granted. It has been built by people who have been ensuring to have a welfare state, to open spaces to everyone, to give opportunities, to have more gender rights, etc. I mean, you might not have solved everything, because no country solves everything, and you always have challenges. But the Nordic countries, and Sweden for us, are role models that we want to follow. And of course, every country has its own depths and its own challenges. But I think the world we're living, with the discussion on the importance of multilateralism in trying to be attacked by many fronts, is very complicated. And as you said, we need to fight for that. We need to ensure that national and foreign policy really represent the real defense of real democracy and human rights.
We are so happy that Michelle came to Sweden, because we also want to say from this government that we will back her up. We will be a friend and an ally in her important and difficult job. And we will also have to look at ways to finance and compensate for the US, as we've done in other areas as well, and to help you so that you can do your job. So
The thing that you can do in any organization or as a leader is to have only yes women or yes men around you. You need fresh eyes to tell you, no, this is not going well, this is going well, we can do better. But I have learned, though, is that there are places and moments where you can say. As a minister, for example, I would go to my president when I thought something was not well, and I will have a private meeting with him. I will tell him, look, Mr. President, this is not right, this is not going well. Maybe they're telling you that this is okay. So you can do things, but you can see where is the best opportunity, how you do it without humiliating the person you're criticizing. That's my experience. But I think we do need, every leader needs to have people who speaks out, who tells you the truth. The worst thing that you can do is to have people around you that believe that loyalty is to tell you that everything is fine. I believe that loyalty is to tell you what's wrong, because that's what makes you make good decisions. That for me is loyalty. So I think nobody should leave it alone. About human rights violation in the UN, I don't know what he is exactly speaking about, but there has been situation that has been in the past denounced, and there are many different instruments and tools within the United Nations. If it's a violation of human rights inside the UN, or if it's, for example, a peacekeeping operation, and there are, I was part of the mission that we analyzed the situation of denouncers of peacekeeping operation, people that were sort of having, you know, getting involved with children or young girls, asking for money and so on. And of course we created sort of protocol, very clear protocol. Any peacekeeper who will go do something that will be out of the ethics rule, he will be taken out and went back to the country, but to the justice there. So there was it was a really big protocol in terms of how to behave, what behavior was not tolerated, and what will be the sanctions for it. So it's different situations, if I may say. And of course, as in any job, some people sometimes feel that they are not respected, that they're bad treated, but there is an office that looks at all these issues and asks, for example, if somebody says that his boss or her boss is a person who treats bad, the boss will be called and they will have an interview with both parts, and there are protocols to follow.